Welcome to Night City, a technocratic state home to over 5 million people. Home of huge corporations and glass shards that we call skyscrapers, and of course, the NCART system that whisks people up and down the bay every single day. So let's see without further ado what the system looks like and how we even got here. Now, of course, as I always say, knowing the city is extremely important because that is how the public transport network was developed, or either the city being developed around the public transport network. But here, the lore of the city is thicker than all college textbooks combined, so we'll just look at a bit more of the urban climate itself. Firstly, we notice that Night City is in a coastal layout. This means that the spoke and wheel system is not as achievable, for example, Berlin or Moscow. This kind of resembles Chicago if it was looped, as Chicago faces a very large lake. On the north side, you have the Watson district, which is the northernmost district and home to a lot of industry and Little China. Then right next to it, you have Westbrook, which has Japantown. They put Little China and Japantown next to each other, kind of like in real life. Then, of course, City Center, which is pretty self-explanatory. Haywood is just to the south of the city center, and south of it are its neighbors of Santo Domingo and the southernmost district, Pacifica. Before I describe each neighborhood and its nature, let's take a look at the satellite map. Over here is the Night City area as viewed from above. To the left, you can see the huge spaceport and how it is a bit closer than other spaceports are to metropolitan areas. And just north, you can see a massive complex owned by Arasaka, taking up most of the Watson district. Southeast is the slightly more topographically isolated Westbrook district. You can see that the density starts to pick up here, and there's a major highway that runs through it to the looks of it. You can also see how the highway confines the district in a way, where after the highway east, there is almost nothing. And then we can see, precisely in the center, the city center, of course, which also has the quickest connection to the spaceport and that big circle in the center, which is the Corpo Plaza, which hosts only the most powerful people in the entire world, which are the people who join my Discord server and follow my Instagram.
Oh my gosh, that was so smooth!
Directly south of the Corpo Plaza is Haywood, which is the neighborhood that has a ton of roads going through it, supplying the city center with great car access. And as you can see, the density cuts off right as the road stretches across the neighborhood, leading to this absolute lack of density right next to a super dense city center. And I thought it was pretty bad there, but when you go across the river or the canal, whatever the heck that is, it's definitely artificial. That's all I know. But once you go across that body of water, you can see that it takes a much worse hit than even Haywood, which I was incredibly surprised by. And you can see all the highways going through it, all the roads, but it just looks desolate. I mean, Pacifica to the south looks absolutely decimated, and then Santo Domingo doesn't look much better. And now for a crash course on the different districts and their purposes by a guy who's never played Cyberpunk before. I am very sorry in advance. Alright, so Watson, you have the Arasaka waterfront, which is a very, very heavily guarded industrial area that serves, of course, the Arasaka Corporation. Think of Arasaka as like the Google, Netflix, Amazon, everything combined, and you made that a company, and yeah, you gave them control over this area. Over to the east, it looks like it's a very poor place with a lot of crime, or at least that's what I've read, but I can see that from the satellite view even. And then in the south, you have Little China, and that place is more dense. It's a bit nicer. You can see how it kind of amalgamates into the city center glob. The district itself has a lot of very nice areas and then a lot of very crowded, dense market areas because you have the corporation presence from Arasaka and then also a very large population of Chinese immigrants. A thing I also like about this district is just how cool the Little China place was done by the devs. You can see the floating waterfront market, Cyberpunk grunge aesthetic going on, and they really nailed that. And especially what I appreciate is that the district actually feels industrial. It doesn't feel like a piece of the map with some factories plopped down. You can see the steam, the concrete, everything works perfectly and harmoniously. Now, to go over to the next district, we could use the E line, but that's a very complicated story. But just the B line works, and it goes crosstown. So that's already a good sign that there are crosstown lines within the system. But as for Westbrook as a district, it has quite a stark contrast, not just a body of water separating it. Westbrook could technically be considered the fancy revived neighborhood, maybe something like Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This neighborhood is home to various wealthy elites and also members of the Japanese Yakuza. This could have ties with Arasaka, potentially. Along with that, the thing that completely destroyed the district originally was this nuclear bomb that set off in the Arasaka Towers in 2023. After a few decades of being a desolate area, similar to its Watson counterpart, it was then revived and transformed into an up-and-coming neighborhood by the wealthy elite. And there are gangs in the area, but they only operate at night because of just how secure and exclusive the neighborhood is with its corporate security presence. But across a body of water from both of those districts is the gem of the gem mine. What the heck is that analogy? What the heck? The creme de la creme of Night City, which is the city center. And all of the metro lines in Westbrook connect to it as well. That's how significant it is, and that's how you know that Westbrook is an orbiter for the commuters of city center. It hosts all the big corporations, all the massive skyscrapers. It's the central business district, and it has, Arasaka, the company that you heard of earlier, Petrochem, Militech Biotechnica, and Kangtao, which are, the big boys, the big competitors who fight each other in wars, stuff like that, corporation stuff. As for a physical description, take any major central business district like Manhattan or Canary Wharf, La Défense, and give it Trenbolone acetate, because these buildings are huge, sizable, and there is also just a massive roundabout in the center with plazas, bars, hotels, anything a human could want in a central business district. That's what the city center in Night City is like. So yeah, everyone just goes there. And as for getting there, you can get there from any part of the city because all 5 lines stop in the central part of the city. It's kind of like how the New York City subway was originally built, to bring people in and out, but this has some quirks to make it effective for traveling anywhere. And specifically, 3 stops are right in the city center at Memorial Park Station. In discussing further on the topic of Memorial Park, it is, of course, the hub station since it's in the center, like with many other cities. This is home to various different NCART lines and also the future maglev network. So this will be a whole central hub station with long-distance rail connections. Quite exciting. Looking at the physical station itself, it does actually have a similar atmosphere to real transit hubs in the United States, but with just a cyberpunk take on it. You can see the concourses with the tactile strips everywhere, the sidewalks, and somewhat unique architecture for a transit hub, maybe something like a take on Fulton Center in New York City. As for the center, let's talk about an adjacent district that's on the same landmass called Haywood. It's, of course, on the same island as the town center, but it is a slightly different district because it has a few subdivisions. You have an area called the Glen, an area called Vista del Rey to the east, and then an area called Wells Springs to the west. And these places contrast heavily, despite them being in a pretty tight area within each other. If you're in the northern part, you'll be close to the city center and will have great access to the city center, of course, and you'll have good safety. Picture it as the downtown Brooklyn of Night City. And funnily enough, this area was also gentrified, just like downtown Brooklyn. There are a good amount of areas which are quite dangerous, including the Vista del Rey part, which is overrun by gangs. However, transit access to the city center is pretty good, with 3 lines connecting Haywood to the rest of the city. And then you have Pacifica and Santo Domingo across the body of water, and those are just corporate nuke sites, factories, mega buildings, boxes for people to sleep in. Yeah, I'm not even going to talk about those places. They used to be war zones. In general, just don't go to Pacifica or Santo Domingo. And this is coming from a person who's never played, so please. Now, the lines do have some interesting configurations, but the question is, what kind of system do they even use in such a cyberpunk futuristic city? Is it a typical rail system? Are the gauges wider? What are the technical differences? So, what trains will we be riding across Night City as a resident? Firstly, a lot of the system is elevated above ground, which is a very effective strategy for building metropolitan railways quickly and cost-effectively. But the next massive thing you'll notice is that the trains are not conventional trains. There aren't 2 tracks with a gauge between them, that being the distance between the rails. It just seems like one solid block. So sometime in history, railways switched from standard tracks to monorail, which is quite interesting given that currently, in the present day, monorails are not as efficient as trains, so some kind of technological change must have happened in the meantime. The exterior livery is a nice yellow with gray and a red text saying Night City Train. Along with this, it looks like there might be bars on the outside, but the thing I've noticed is that the exterior and interiors do not match up. Now, I'm pretty sure that these exteriors are from the Metro Rework mod. I haven't played the game, so I don't know, but if it is, I'm very sorry. But the edges, as you can see, the outer walls are flat, and there is 1 door. And then if you look on the interior of the trains in the game, you have large glass double doors and large glass windows, as well as the wall having a curvature to it, not just being a flat panel. It seems that there is a lore-accurate version, though, in the Edge Runners edition, which you can see the correlation between the interior in the Cyberpunk game and the exterior in this Edge Runners version. Moving on to the interior, I can really appreciate some details. For example, the grab handles at the door entrances, the massive glass doors, which I really like, the bench seats, which still look sleek and modern, along with all the screens everywhere displaying information for passengers, and along with it, some details that remind me of rolling stock around the world. For example, the black and yellow stripes reminding me of the Asian metro trains, for example, the Hong Kong MTR rolling stock that has the black and white black and yellow safety tape, sorry. And the glass doors, which remind me of the Siemens Warsaw trains. On the rolling stock, you do have some special events like musicians and beggars, but aside from that, now that we've looked at the rolling stock and the city itself, let's take a detailed look at the network, or at least a more so thorough brush over than what we did before. Now, then we'll know if the NCART is a decent system or not, and how it could be improved or changed. The first line, according to labeling order, is the A line, which is colored red. It goes from Eisenhower Street up in North Watson all the way down to Santo Domingo, where it terminates at Mega Building H7 along with the B line. This line's purpose is to mostly serve a north-south direction, getting people from the southern part to the northern part and vice versa. Interestingly, the path the line takes is quite concerning when it comes to design. If you look, starting from Mega Building H7, it takes a sharp turn southward and then various sharp turns up into downtown. This is quite counterintuitive, as it's just a U right there, there's a U-turn, where instead it should probably just go straight to Congress and MLK without taking such a severe detour. But then from there, it follows a decently standard path up to Eisenhower Street. This line layout kind of reminds me of the M1 in Istanbul, with its U-turns and sharp curves kind of getting in the way of the termini as the crow flies. Other than that, the areas served are pretty vast. It goes from Santo Domingo into Pacifica, Haywood, City Center, and Watson, and it has connections to various lines. And a pattern you will notice is that almost every line has a connection to all the other lines on its route. This is great for interconnectability and keeping transfers within the system, as out-of-system transfers, for example metro to a bus and then to a metro again or metro to a bus, just creates a huge mental barrier and discourages the overall use of public transportation. So very good on the network designers for creating various opportunities for efficient connections. Another great thing about the A line is that it has a little bit of a crosstown feeling going on here between Alexander Street and Republic. You can see that between both of them it creates a connection which would otherwise not be bridged whatsoever, creating a massive gap. And then that creates a sort of circular or square layout around city center, where if you are in city center, you could access anything. Sharing the same terminus at Mega Building H7 is the sister line, the B line, which is colored yellow. This line has quite a different configuration and serves as a very interesting route with a unique function to the network. It starts at Mega Building H7, goes along the perimeter of the map, and it terminates at Pacifica Stadium. Now you might be thinking, why is the ride from Santo Domingo to Pacifica take such a detour? But you're missing the point. The line is not meant to take people from Santo Domingo to Pacifica, but rather have a lot of people coming in and coming out of the line because it works as an orbiter. So let's say someone at Glen North wanted to get all the way up to Eisenhower Street. Instead of just taking the green line and making some transfers and detours, they can just take the yellow line all the way to Mega Building H10 and then transfer up to Eisenhower Street. This way, central corridors are not overloaded and travel times become much faster. As you can see, this bypasses the city center mostly and then works as a way to get people from outside districts to other outside districts. It's kind of like the Interborough Express concept being proposed in New York City at the current moment. The C line is a very short line consisting of only 4 stations, but its job is to get people from the transit-starved area of Pacifica all the way to the city center, allowing for a sort of shuttle service. I mean, it's not a shuttle service, but you could as well call it that because of how short the line is. Without the C line, which is colored blue, a path to Memorial Park would be a lot more complex, having to take the B line all the way to Glen North or Ebonike, I didn't pronounce that correctly at all, and then taking the green line up to Memorial Park. So this provides a 1C journey to the city center. As for the green line, otherwise known as the D line, the layout is very complicated, having a large loop at the end and then another large loop. It's in the shape of a figure 8, and it's quite interesting to explain, but what you'll have to know is just that it provides a lot of transfers, and make sure to get on the correct train. If you thought that was all the confusion, wait until you see oh my goodness gracious, the E line, the orange line. Just look at this thing. This is a flashback to my GTA 5 video. You have a line crossover without a transfer where the intersection is to make the trip shorter. Right? It starts up at Eisenhower Street, goes all the way down the perimeter, right? It follows the orbital B line, and then it follows the green line a bit. And it creates this seamless 1-seat ride between certain lines. But then it just kind of has this strange loop and then ends at Charter Hill. So the trip from Charter Hill to Japantown South is very lengthy. But oh my goodness, yeah, what an interesting design. But you do get a good connection from Sarasti and Republic to Charter Hill if that's what you're looking for. So I guess that's the purpose. If you use it in a correct way, right, then it works really well. But if you're a tourist or visiting, some poor sod is gonna ride the loop, the crossover Jim Jam, and they're gonna have a bad time. And so here are my thoughts on the system itself. Right? Given the way Night City is designed, it's not a circular city, it's a little bit ovular, it's a little bit ellipsed, so you can see how it's slightly more rectangular in a vertical config. And it works really, really well for the city, I must say. You could get from pretty much anywhere to anywhere else thanks to shared lines, but I really do wonder what the frequencies are because of shared lines, right? In certain areas where you only have 1 or 2 lines, you might have to wait a bit. But overall, you have like this square format, right? Where all the districts are surrounded by lines, right? Squares, 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 squares everywhere. It's a different take on the Soviet triangular method, which was used to encompass city centers and busy areas. So overall, the coverage is really great, and if you combine this with other forms of public transport, the metro really is seamless. So the one thing they just need to clean up is the rider experience. I heard that there is a lot of crime on the system, and also possibly make the D and E line instructions a little bit more clear for those who don't know. And of course, the game is set in 2077, so there's a lot of history behind the system which I did not cover. So if you do want me to make a video on the lore, please let me know. I read and I try to respond to all the comments. Make sure to join the Discord server and follow my Instagram if you like content like this. I'm the Transit Diaries, and as always, stay tuned for more. I couldn't wait for you to come and clear the cupboards, but now you're gone and leaving nothing but a sign. Another evening I'll be sitting reading in between your lines, because I miss you all the time. Oh no. So get away, another way to feel that you didn't want yourself to know, and let yourself go. You know you didn't lose your self-control. Let's start at the rainbow. Thank you all for watching.